Fireside Tailes for Wolfgang. Episode 58. Greetings and salutations. I'm Hunter Ackerman, here to read some classic literature for you. Christopher Marlowe lived in England at the same time as Shakespeare. And I read a couple of his things before, I think on Valentine's Day. So this evening, here is something from one of his works called Hero and Leander. This is usually referred to by one line: "It lies not in our power to love or hate." By Christopher Marlowe. It lies not in our power to love or hate, for will in us is overruled by fate. When two are stripped, long ere the course begin, we wish that one should lose, the other win, and one especially do we affect of two gold ingots, like in each respect. The reason no man knows, let it suffice. What we behold is censured by our eyes. We're both deliberate, the love is slight. Whoever loved, that loved not at first sight. Fireside Tailes for Wolfgang. Originally broadcast on GWC Productions' YouTube channel, Caps Media Television Channel 6 in Ventura on KPPQ LP Ventura at 104.1 FM, and on the KPPQ Podcast Network. Episodes can also be viewed on Pasadena Media, either on Spectrum Charter Channel 32 or on AT&T Uverse Channel 99. This is not a short story. This is an essay, so you can think of it as a meandering, thoughtful musing, I suppose. There was this collection of essays called Not That It Matters, and this collection of essays appeared in a variety of newspapers at the beginning of the last century. It's sort of an upper-class, mild-mannered humor of the 1920s. Many were charming and generally humorous in a gentle, whimsical way, as you might expect from the author of Winnie the Pooh. This essay is a short essay called Goldfish, from the collection Not That It Matters, 1920, by A. Milne. Let us talk about, anything, you will. Goldfish, for instance. Goldfish are a symbol of old-world tranquility or mid-Victorian futility, according to their position in the home. Outside the home, in that wild state from which civilization has dragged them, they may have stood for daredevil courage or constancy or devotion. I cannot tell. I may only speak of them now as I find them, which is in the garden or in the drawing room, or in their lily-leaved pool sunk deep in the old flagged terrace, upon whose borders the blackbird whistles his early morning song. They remind us of sundials and lavender and old delightful things, but in their cheap glass bowl upon the three-legged table above which the cloth-covered canary maintains a stolid silence, they remind me of anti-maskers, which is a small cloth placed over the backs or arms of chairs or the head or cushions of a sofa to prevent soiling of the permanent fabric underneath. And they remind me of horsehair sofas and all that is depressing. It is hard that the goldfish himself should have so little choice in the matter. Goldfish look pretty in the terrace pond, yet I doubt if it was the need for prettiness which brought them there. rather the need for some things to throw things to. No one of the initiate can sit in front of nature's most wonderful effect, the sea, without wishing to throw stones into it. The physical pleasure of the effort and the aesthetic pleasure of the splash combining to produce perfect contentment. So, by the margin of the pool, the same desires stir within one. And because ants' eggs do not splash and look untidy on the surface of the water, there must be a gleam of gold and silver to put the crown upon one's pleasure. Perhaps when you have been feeding the goldfish, you have not thought of it like that. But at least you must have wondered why, of all diets, they should prefer ants' eggs. Ants' eggs are, I should say, the very last thing which one would take to without argument. It must be an acquired taste. And this being so, one naturally asks oneself how goldfish came to acquire it. I suppose, but I'm lamentably ignorant on these as on all other matters, that there was a time when goldfish lived a wild, free life of their own. They roamed the sea or the river or whatever it was, fighting for existence, and nature showed them, as she always does, the food which suited them. Now, I've often come across ants' nests in my travels, but never when swimming. In seas and rivers, pools and lakes I have wandered, but nature has never put ants' eggs in my way. No doubt, it would only be right. The goldfish has a keener eye than I have for these things, but if they had been there, should I have missed them so completely? I think not. For if they had been there, they must have been there in great quantities. I can imagine a goldfish slowly acquiring the taste for them through the centuries, but only if other food were denied to him. Only if wherever he went, ants' eggs, ants' eggs, ants' eggs drifted down the stream to him. Yet, since it would seem that he's acquired the taste, it can only be that the taste has come to him with captivity, has been forced upon him, I should have said. The old wild goldfish, this is my theory, was a more terrible beast than we think. Given his proper diet, he could not have been kept within the limits of the terrace pool. He would have been unsuited to domestic life. He would have dragged in the shrieking child as she leant to feed him. As the result of many experiments, ants' eggs were given him to keep him thin. You can see for yourself what a bloodless diet it is. Ants' eggs were given him to quell his spirit. And just as a man, if he has sufficient colds, can get up a passion even for ammoniated quinine, so ammoniated quinine. So the goldfish has grown in captivity to welcome the once hated omelet. Let us consider now the case of the goldfish in the house. His diet is the same, but how different his surroundings. If his bowl is placed on a table in the middle of the floor, he has but to flash his tail once, and he has been all around the drawing room. The drawing room may not seem much to you, but to him, this impressionist picture through the curved glass must be amazing. Let not the outdoor goldfish boast of his freedom. What does he, in his little world of water lily roots, know of the vista upon vista which opens to his more happy brother as he passes jauntily from China dog to ottoman and from ottoman to Henry's father? here is life. It may be that in the course of years, he will get used to it, even bored by it. Indeed, for that reason, I always advocate giving him a glance at the dining room or the bedrooms on Wednesdays and Saturdays, but his first day in the bowl must be the opening of an undreamt of heaven to him. Again, what an adventurous life is his. At any moment, a cat may climb up and fetch him out. A child may upset him. Grown-ups may neglect to feed him or change his water. The temptation to take him up and massage him must be irresistible to outsiders. All these dangers, the goldfish in the pond avoids. He lives a sheltered and unexciting life, and when he wants to die, he dies unnoticed, unregretted, but for his brother, the tears and the solemn funeral. Yes, now that I've thought it out, I can see that I was wrong in calling the indoor goldfish a symbol of mid-Victorian futility. An article of this sort is no good if it does not teach the writer something as well as his readers. I recognize him now as the symbol of enterprise and endurance, of restlessness and post-impressionism. He's not mid-Victorian. He is 5th Georgian, which is all I want to say about Goldfish. William Carlos Williams. Doesn't really matter how many first names it sounds like the guy had. He was a medical doctor, poet, novelist, essayist. He was a playwright. Though his career was initially overshadowed by other poets, he became an inspiration to the Beat generation in the 1950s and 60s. He was known as an experimenter, an innovator, a revolutionary figure in American poetry. Yet, in comparison to artists of his own time, Williams lived a remarkably conventional life as a doctor. His poetic heroes were John Keats and Walt Whitman, till at college he met Ezra Pound, who became a friend and mentor. This led him to be part of the Imagist movement, which was a reaction against the rigid and ordered formulaic poetry of the time. Correlative revolutionary movements had begun in painting, such as Cezanne, music, such as Stravinsky, fiction, Stein. All of the following poems are from his book called Sour Grapes. It was published in 1921. So from the book Sour Grapes, published in 1921, this poem is January by William Carlos Williams. Again, I reply to the triple winds, running chromatic fifths of derision outside my window. Play louder! You will not succeed. I am bound more to my sentences the more you batter at me to follow you, and the wind, as before, fingers perfectly its derisive music. It's funny, that's actually a little reminiscent. Just this afternoon, I was reading some Isaac Asimov short stories. And he was saying in the preface to one of his short stories that he is one of the stranger humans out there because he hated nice sunny days of perfect weather. The reason being is he would close himself off to concentrate on the typewriter and write, and with completely artificial light so that there was no like brighter, lighter times, just no weather to distract him, no birds, animals outside windows, etc. And those sunny, perfect days made it really hard for him to just stay in and work. So, yeah, I like that little conclusion there. Again, I reply to the triple winds running chromatic fifths of derision outside my window. Play louder, you will not succeed. I am bound more to my sentences the more you batter at me to follow you, and the wind, as before, fingers perfectly its derisive music, calling for distraction. Yeah. This poem is called Blizzard by William Carlos Williams. Snow. Years of anger following hours that float idly down. The blizzard drifts its weight deeper and deeper for 3 days, or 60 years, eh? Then the sun, a clutter of yellow and blue flakes. Hairy-looking trees stand out in long alleys over a wild solitude. The man turns, and there, his solitary track stretched out upon the world. This is Winter Trees by William Carlos Williams. All the complicated details of the attiring and the disattiring are completed. A liquid moon moves gently among the long branches, thus having prepared their buds against a sure winter. The wise trees stand sleeping in the cold. From the book, A Gallery of Children, published in 1927 by A. Milne. This story is called Sand Babies. They had never been to the seaside before, so you can imagine how pleased they were when Mr. Merriweather said, "I think we will go to the sea this summer. It will do the children good." They all began to jump about and get very excited, all except John. John had heard about the sea, but he didn't quite believe it. So he said to his father, When you go to the seaside, do you really see the sea?" All the other children laughed, and Mary, the eldest, who knew everything, said, "Silly, of course you do." John kept his eyes on father and said, "Do you really?" And his father said, "Yes, old boy, you do." And then John gave a great sigh of happiness and said, I thought perhaps you did." And he walked round and round the garden singing, "I'm going to see the sea." Mary went off with her mother to talk about what sort of clothes they would all want. Mary was 10, and when you are 10 and the eldest, almost everything depends on you. John was 3, and the youngest, and sometimes Mary was not quite sure whether she was John's mother or not. If you could have 2 mothers, then she was one of them. "The great question," said Mr. Merriweather next day, "is, where shall we go?" John looked at him as if he could hardly believe. "I thought we were going to the sea," he said, almost crying. "Silly, of course we are," said Mary, "but there are lots of places by the sea. Let's go to a place where there are heaps of lovely shells." "And sand," said Margaret. "And rocks," said Joan. "And pools." "Shells, sand, rocks, pools," wrote Mr. Merriweather on his cuff. "Anything else?" John tried to speak once or twice, but nothing happened. "Yes, darling," said his mother. "See?" said John faintly. And C, wrote Mr. Merriweather. And what do you want, Stephen? Stephen was 4. He thought a good deal, but never said anything. So if it hadn't been for Joan, nobody would ever have known what he wanted. Ah, Stephen wants the same as me. Don't you, Stephen? Said Joan quickly. Stephen nodded. He was thinking of something else. On the Monday, they all went off. As soon as they got out at the station, Mr. Merriweather said, I can smell the sea. And Mary said, so can I. But she couldn't really. John very nearly cried again because he thought the sea was something you saw, not just something you smelt. But Mary told him that tomorrow, after breakfast, he would really see it. Wouldn't he, Mother? And Mrs. Merriweather said, yes, it was too late now. Better wait till tomorrow. So, they waited till tomorrow. As soon as they had finished breakfast, and they were all too excited to eat much, except Stephen, who could think just as well whether he was eating or whether he wasn't, Mary took them out. Mr. Merriweather stayed behind to read his paper, and Mrs. Merriweather stayed behind to see about dinner because they knew they could trust Mary. Joan and Stephen walked in front, Joan chattering to Stephen and Stephen thinking. Then came Margaret, talking eagerly over her shoulder to Mary, and then came Mary holding John's hand, saying, we're nearly there, dear. Suddenly, they turned the corner, and there they were. Mary said proudly, there, darling. There's the sea. Margaret said, isn't it lovely? Joan said, oh, look, Stephen. Stephen said, nothing, of course. And John opened his mouth to say something, but turned very red and burst into tears. They were all very sorry for John, except Stephen, who was thinking of something else. The worst of it was that none of them knew what was the matter with him. Had he had too much breakfast? Or too little? Was he tired? Would he like Margaret to take him back? John couldn't tell him. He didn't know. What would you like to do, darling? Said Mary. Shall we pick some lovely shells? John sniffed and nodded. They went on to the beach. There were many other children there, but they were much too happy to take any notice of the Merriweather family. Now, said Mary, let's see who can find the prettiest shell. Oh, look at this one. Oh, and this one, Mary, said Margaret. We'll put them in my bag, said Mary. Would you like to hold the bag, darling? Yes, said John meekly. Afraid to look at it again, he stood with his back to the sea and dropped the shells into the bag as they were given to him. Why had the sea made him cry like that? He didn't know. Perhaps Stephen. He looked at Stephen. No. It was no good asking Stephen. From William Carlos Williams. William Carlos Williams. This poem is called Spring Storm by William Carlos Williams. The sky has given over its bitterness. Out of the dark change all day long, rain falls and falls as if it would never end. Still, the snow keeps its hold on the ground, but water from 1,000 runnels, it collects swiftly, dappled with black, cuts a way for itself through green ice in the gutters. Drop after drop, it falls from the withered grass stems of the overhanging embankment. This is The Birds by William Carlos Williams. The world begins again, not wholly insufflated. The blackbirds in the rain upon the dead top branches of the living tree, stuck fast to the low clouds, notate the dawn. Their shrill cries sound, announcing appetite, and drop among the bending roses and the dripping grass. Chapter 10, in which Christopher Robin gives Pooh a party, and we say goodbye. One day, when the sun had come back over the forest, bringing with it the scent of May, and all the streams of the forest were tinkling happily to find themselves their own pretty little shape again, and the little pools lay dreaming of the life they had seen and the big things they had done, and in the warmth and quiet of the forest, the cuckoo was trying over his voice carefully and listening to see if he liked it, and wood pigeons were complaining gently to themselves in their lazy, comfortable way that it was the other fellow's fault. But it didn't matter very much. On such a day as this, Christopher Robin whistled in a special way he had. An owl came flying out of the 100-acre wood to see what was wanted. "Owl," said Christopher Robin, "I am going to give a party." "You are you?" said Owl. "And it's going to be a special sort of party because of what Pooh did, when he did, what he did to save Piglet from the flood." "Oh, that's what it's for, is it?" said Owl. "Yes. So, will you tell Pooh as quickly as you can, and all the others, because it will be tomorrow?" "Oh, it will it?" said Owl, still being as helpful as possible. "So will you go and tell them, Owl?" Owl tried to think of something very wise to say, but he couldn't. So he flew off to tell the others, and the first person he told was Pooh. "Pooh," he said, "Christopher Robin is giving a party." "Oh," said Pooh. And then, seeing that Owl expected him to say something else, he said, "Will there be those little cake things with the pink sugar icing?" Owl felt it was rather beneath him to talk about little cake things with pink sugar icing. So he told Pooh exactly what Christopher Robin had said and flew off to Eeyore. "A party for me," thought Pooh to himself. "How grand." And he began to wonder if all the other animals would know that it was a special Pooh party, and if Christopher Robin had told them about the floating bear, and the brain of Pooh, and all the wonderful ships he had invented and sailed on. And he began to think how awful it would be if everybody had forgotten about it, and nobody quite knew what the party was for. And the more he thought like this, the more the party got muddled in his mind, like a dream when nothing goes right. And the dream began to sing itself over and over in his head until it became a sort of song. It was an anxious Pooh song. "3 cheers for Pooh. For who? For Pooh. Why, what did he do? I thought you knew. He saved his friend from a wetting. 3 cheers for Bear. For where?
For Bear. He couldn't swim, but he rescued him. He rescued who? Oh, listen, do. I'm talking of Pooh. Of who? Of Pooh. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. Well, Pooh was a bear of enormous brain. Just say it again. Of enormous brain. Of enormous what? Well, he ate a lot, and I don't know if he could swim or not, but he managed to float on a sort of a boat. On a sort of what? Well, a sort of pot. So, now let's give him 3 hearty cheers. So now let's give him 3 hearty witches? And hope he'll be with us for years and years and grow in health and wisdom and riches. 3 cheers for Pooh. For who? For Pooh. 3 cheers for Bear. For where? For Bear. 3 cheers for the wonderful Winnie the Pooh. Just somebody tell me, what did he do?
While this was going on inside him, Owl was talking to Eeyore. Eeyore, said Owl, Christopher Robin is giving a party. Very interesting, said Eeyore. I suppose they'll be sending me down the odd bits which got trodden on. Kind and thoughtful. Not at all. Don't mention it. There's an invitation for you. What's that like? An invitation, Eeyore. Yeah, I heard you. Who dropped it? This isn't anything to eat. It's asking you to the party. Tomorrow. Eeyore shook his head slowly. You mean Piglet, the little fellow with the excited ears. The one who's rumored to be an armadillo, but isn't. That's Piglet. I'll tell him. No, said Owl, getting quite fussy. It's you. Are you sure? Of course I'm sure. Christopher Robin said all of them. Tell all of them. All of them except Eeyore. All of them, said Owl sulkily. Ah, said Eeyore. A mistake, no doubt. But still, I shall come. Only, don't blame me if it rains. But it didn't rain. Christopher Robin had made a long table out of some pieces of wood, and they all sat round it. Christopher Robin sat at one end, and Pooh sat at the other, and between them on one side were Owl and Eeyore and Piglet, and between them on the other side were Rabbit and Roo and Kanga, and all Rabbit's friends and relations spread themselves about on the grass and waited hopefully in case anyone spoke to them, or dropped anything, or asked them the time. It was the first party to which Roo had ever been, and he was very excited. As soon as ever they had sat down, he began to talk. "Good-eye, Pooh," he squeaked.
"Hello, Roo,"
said Pooh. Roo jumped up and down in his seat for a little while and began again. "Hi, good-eye, Piglet," he squeaked. Piglet waved a paw at him, being too busy to say anything. "Good-eye, Eeyore," said Roo. Eeyore nodded gloomily at him. "It'll rain soon. You see if it doesn't," he said. Roo looked to see if it didn't, and it didn't. So he said, "Good-eye, Owl." And Owl said, "Hello, my little friend," in a kindly way, and went on telling Christopher Robin about an accident which had nearly happened to a friend of his, whom Christopher Robin didn't know, and Kanga said to Roo, Drink up your milk, dear, first, and then talk a bit afterwards, eh? So, Roo, who was drinking his milk, tried to say that he could do both at once and had to be patted on the back and dried for quite a long time afterwards. When they had all nearly eaten enough, Christopher Robin banged on the table with his spoon, and everybody stopped talking and was very silent except Roo, who was just finishing a loud attack of hiccups and trying to look as if it was one of Rabbit's relations. "This party," said Christopher Robin, "is a party because of what someone did. And we all know who it was, and it's his party because of what he did, and I've got a present for him, and here it is." Then he felt about a little and whispered, "Where is it?" While he was looking, Eeyore coughed in an impressive way and began to speak. "Friends," he said, "including oddments, it's a great pleasure, or perhaps I better say it has been a pleasure so far, to see you at my party. What I did was nothing. Any of you, except Rabbit and Owl and Kanga, would have done the same. Oh, and Pooh. My remarks do not, of course, apply to Piglet and Roo because they're too small. Any of you would have done the same, but it just happened to be me. It was not, I need hardly say, with an idea getting what Christopher Robin is looking for now." And he put his front leg to his mouth and said in a loud whisper, "Try under the table, that I did what I did, but because I feel that we should all do what we can do to help, I feel that we should all..." said Roo accidentally. "Roo, dear," said Kanga reproachfully. "Was it me?" asked Roo, a little surprised.
What is Eeyore talking about?"
Piglet whispered to Pooh.
"I don't know,"
said Pooh rather dolefully.
I thought it was your party."
"I thought it was, once, but I suppose it isn't."
"I'd sooner it's yours rather than Eeyore's,"
said Piglet.
"So would I,"
said Pooh. Said Roo again. "As I was saying," said Eeyore loudly and sternly, "as I was saying when I was interrupted by various loud sounds, I feel that..." "Here it is!" cried Christopher Robin excitedly. "Pass it down to silly old Pooh. It's for Pooh." "For Pooh?" said Eeyore. "Of course it is. The best bear in all of the world." "I might have known," said Eeyore. "After all, one can't complain. I have my friends. Somebody spoke to me only yesterday, and it was the last week or the week before that Rabbit bumped into me and said, 'Bother the social round. Always something going on.'" Nobody was listening, for they were all saying, "Open it, Pooh," and
"What is it, Pooh?" and
"I know what it is." "No, you don't." And other helpful remarks of this sort. And, of course, Pooh was opening it as quickly as ever he could, but without cutting the string, because you never know when a bit of string might be useful. At last, it was undone. When Pooh saw what it was, He nearly fell down. He was so pleased. It was a special pencil case. There were pencils in it marked B for bear, and pencils marked HB for helping bear, and pencils marked BB for brave bear. There was a knife for sharpening the pencils, and India rubber for rubbing out anything you had spelt wrong, and a ruler for ruling lines on the words to walk on, and inches marked on the ruler in case you wanted to know how many inches anything was, and blue pencils, and red pencils, and green pencils for saying special things in blue and red and green. And all these lovely things were in little pockets of their very own, in a special case, which shut with a click when you clicked it. And they were all for Pooh.
Oh,
said Pooh. Oh, Pooh, said everybody else, except Eeyore.
thank you.
Glowed Pooh. But Eeyore was saying to himself, this writing business, pencils and whatnot, overrated if you ask me. Silly stuff. Nothing in it. Later on, when they had all said goodbye and thank you to Christopher Robin, Pooh and Piglet walked home thoughtfully together in the golden evening, and for a long time they were silent.
When you wake up in the morning, Pooh,
said Piglet at last,
what's the first thing you say to yourself?
What's for breakfast?
said Pooh.
What do you say, Piglet?
I say, I wonder what's going to happen exciting today,
said Piglet. Pooh nodded thoughtfully.
It's the same thing,
he said. And what did happen? asked Christopher Robin. When? The next morning. I don't know. Well, could you think of it and tell me and Pooh some other time? If you wanted it very much. But Pooh does, said Christopher Robin. He gave a deep sigh, picked his bear up by the leg, and walked off to the door, trailing Winnie the Pooh behind him. At the door, he turned and said, "Coming while I have my bath?" "I might," I said. "Was Pooh's pencil case any better than mine?" "It was just the same," I said. He nodded and went out, and in a moment I heard Winnie the Pooh bump, 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 going up the stairs behind him.
Transients in Arcadia by O. Henry. There's a certain hotel on Broadway that is very pleasant in the summer. Not many people have heard about it. It is wide and cool. Its rooms have walls of dark wood. There are green trees about it and soft winds. It has all the pleasures of mountain living and none of the pains. You will eat better fish than you could catch for yourself in streams in the hills. You will have better meat than a hunter brings home from the forest. A few have discovered this cool spot in the hot summer of New York. You will see these few guests eating dinner in the hotel restaurant. They're happy to be there and happy to know that they are very few. They feel especially wise because they have found this delightful place. More waiters than necessary are always near. They bring what is wanted before anyone asks for it. The pleasing, distant noise of Broadway sounds like running water in a forest. At every strange footstep, the guests turn quickly and look. They're afraid that the restless pleasure seekers will find their hotel and destroy its pleasant quiet. And so, these few live during the hot season. They enjoy the delights of mountain and seashore. All is brought to them in their Broadway hotel. This summer, a lady came to the hotel giving the name Madame Hellois d'Arcadie Beaumont. Her name was like a name in the story of a great romance, and Madame Beaumont was the kind of lady that the Hotel Lotus loved. She was beautiful, and her manner was very fine. Everyone wished to serve her. The other guests believed that as a guest, she was perfection. This perfect guest did not often leave the hotel. In this, she was like the other guests of the Hotel Lotus. To enjoy that hotel, one needed to forget the city. New York might have been miles away. At night, sometimes one might go out, but during the hot day, one remained in the cool shade of the Lotus. Madame was alone in the Hotel Lotus. She was alone as a queen is alone because of her high position. She rose from bed late in the morning. She was then a sweet, soft person who seemed to shine quietly. But at dinner, she was different. She would wear a beautiful dress. I cannot find words fine enough to tell about it. Always there were red flowers at her shoulder. When the head waiter saw a dress like this, he met it at the door. You thought of Paris when you saw it, and of the theater, and of old romances. A story about Madame Beaumont was told among the guests in the Hotel Lotus. It was said that she was a woman who had traveled all over the world. It was said that she knew the most important people everywhere. It was said that in her white hands, she held the future of certain nations. It was no surprise, they said, that such a lady should choose the Hotel Lotus. It was the most desirable and the most restful place in America during the heat of the summer. On the third day of Madame Beaumont's stay in the hotel, a young man entered as a guest. His clothes were quiet, but good. His face was pleasant. His expression was that of a man who had traveled and could understand the world. He said that he would remain 3 or 4 days. He asked about the sailing of certain ships. He seemed to like this hotel the best of all he had known. The young man put his name on the list of hotel guests. Harold Farrington. It was a name with a fine sound, and the young man belonged perfectly in the quiet life of the Lotus. In 1 day, he became like all the other guests. Like them, he had his table and his waiter. He also had the same fear that the wrong people might suddenly discover this hotel and destroy its peace. After dinner on the next day, Madame Beaumont dropped something as she passed Harold Farrington's table. He picked it up, and, following her, he returned it. He spoke only a few quiet words as he did this, and she was pleased by his good manners. She knew that he was a gentleman. Guests of the Lotus seemed to understand each other very easily. Perhaps It was the result of having discovered this Broadway hotel. Guests felt sure that only especially fine people would enjoy the cool delights of the Lotus. Now, very quickly, a sudden friendship grew between Farrington and Madame Beaumont. They stood and talked for a few moments.
I have seen too many of the usual summer hotels, said Madame Beaumont,
with a small but sweet smile.
Why go to the mountains or the seashore? We cannot escape noise and dust there. The people who make the noise and dust follow us there.
Even on the ocean, said Farrington sadly, those same people are all around us. What shall we do when they discover the Lotus?
I hope they don't discover the Lotus this week, said Madame. I only know of one other place I like as well. It is the beautiful home of a prince in the mountains in Europe.
The best people, said Farrington, are seeking for the quiet places like this one where they can escape the crowds.
I promised myself 3 more days of this delightful rest, said Madame Beaumont. The next day, my ship, she sails.
Harold Farrington's eyes showed that he was sorry. I too must leave then, he said. But I am not sailing for Europe.
We cannot stay here forever, though it is so delightful, said Madame Beaumont. I like it better than my usual life, which is too full of people. I shall never forget my week in the Hotel Lotus.
Nor shall I, said Farrington in a low voice, and I shall never like the ship that carries you away. On their last evening, the two sat together at a little table. A waiter brought them something cool to eat. Madame Beaumont was wearing the same beautiful dress. She seemed thoughtful. When she had finished eating, she took out $1.
Mr. Farrington,
she said with a smile that everyone in the Lotus loved.
I want to tell you something. I'm going to leave early tomorrow morning because I must go back to work. I work selling women's clothes at Casey's shop. That $1 is all the money I have. I won't have more until I get paid at the end of the week. You're a real gentleman and you've been good to me. I wanted to tell you before I went. For a year, I've been planning to come here. Each week I put aside a little of my pay so that I would have enough money. I wanted to live 1 week like a rich lady. I wanted to get up in the morning when I wished. I wanted to be served by the waiters. I wanted to have the best of everything. Now I've done it and I've been happier than I ever was before. And now I'm going back to work. I wanted to tell you about it, Mr. Farrington, because I thought you liked me and I liked you. This week I've told you many things that weren't true. I told you things I've read about. They never happened to me. I've been living in a story. It wasn't real. I wanted you to think I was a great lady. This dress I'm wearing, it's the only pretty dress I own. I haven't paid for it yet. I'm paying for it a little at a time. The price was $75. It was made for me at O'Dowd and Levinsky's shop. I paid $10 first, and now I have to pay $1 a week until it's all paid. And that's all I have to say, Mr. Farrington, except that my name is Mamie Seviter, not Madame Beaumont. Thank you for listening to me. This $1 is the $1 I'm going to pay for my dress tomorrow. And now I go up to my room. As Harold Farrington listened, his face had not changed. When she had finished, he took out a small book and began to write in it. Then he pulled out the small page with his writing on it, and he gave it to her. And he took the $1 from her hand. I go to work too tomorrow morning, he said. And I decided to begin now. That paper says you've paid your $1 for this week. I've been working for O'Dowd and Levinsky for 3 years. Strange, isn't it? We both had the same idea. I always wanted to stay at a good hotel. I get $20 a week. Like you, I put aside a little money at a time until I had enough. Listen, Mommy, will you go to the pleasure park on Coney Island with me on payday? The girl who had been Madame Eloise Beaumont smiled. I'd love to go, Mr. Farrington. Coney will be all right, although we did live here with rich people for a week. They could hear the night noises of the hot city. Inside the Hotel Lotus, it was cool. The waiter stood near, ready to get anything they asked for. Madame Beaumont started up to her room for the last time. And he said, forget that Harold Farrington, will you? McManus is the name. James McManus. Some call me Jimmy. Good night, Jimmy, said Madame. Thank you for joining us for this episode of
Fireside Tales for Wolfgang. You can view more of my work at Hunter's Acoustic Cabin. Directed by Hunter Ackerman. Produced by GWC Productions. In memory of Wolfgang Beastly. Originally broadcast on GWC Productions' YouTube channel, Caps Media Television Channel 6 in Ventura on KPPQ LP Ventura at 104.1 FM and on the KPPQ Podcast Network. Episodes can also be viewed on Pasadena Media, either on Spectrum Charter Channel 32 or on AT&T UVerse Channel 99.